And now for our next speaker, Dr. H. James Harrington, the last guru on quality and business process improvement. Dr. Harrington now serves as the CEO of Harrington Institute, a global management consulting firm and a leading advisor in business strategy, organizational excellence, and business and performance improvement. He is also considered one of the world's leading performance improvement gurus. His education, he has a BS in electrical engineering, an MBA, and a PhD in engineering. Dr. Harrington is the past chairman and president of the prestigious International Academy for Quality and the American Society for Quality Control. He is also an active member of the Global Knowledge Economics Council. He is the president of the Walter L. Hurd Foundation. He served for 10 years as an A-level member of ISO TC 176, the technical committee responsible for writing the ISO 9000 series, and the TC 207, the technical committee responsible for writing ISO 14000 environmental standards. Dr. Harrington has also authored more than 35 books and created 10 software packages on performance improvement. In addition, he has been writing monthly columns for Quality Digest for over 11 years. It has been said without him, Harrington writes the books that other consultants use. Dr. Harrington is my mentor and great friend and working professional. We have served for many years together, and I appreciate him coming together on Harrington Group International. And with his leadership, I believe Harrington International will become a consulting service for many years to come with world-class people and world-class knowledge to help companies just like yours. And without further ado, I now present to you the last living guru on quality and working in the field, Dr. H. James Harrington.
Well, thank you, Rick. That was a very fine introduction. I only wish my mother and father was here to hear it. Father would have been impressed, and my mother would have believed it. Well, thank you, Rick. That was a very fine introduction. I only wish my mother and father was here to hear it. Father would have been impressed, and my mother would have believed it. Oh. Well, it's great to be here with you today, and we're going to talk to you today about performance acceleration management, how to accelerate the way you do business. And it's based upon a book that we published just about a month ago with the same name, Performance Acceleration Management. I hope you're going to enjoy it. You know, some of the typical comments I'm hearing from everybody, it says, every year I'm improving, I have data that proves it, we have a continuous way of improving its life within our organization, everybody believes in it, then why, oh why, do I continuously lose market share? I'm putting in CRM systems, I'm doing everything I can. Why is it I'm not making the progress I should be making? Well, the real reason is you may be improving at 10% a year, but customer expectation is going up at 15% a year, and unless you exceed customer expectations, no matter how fast you're improving, it isn't good enough. And so really what we have to do is accelerate and move faster and take more advantage of the time we have to move forward. Many organizations are improving, but they're just not improving fast enough. And that's what we've got to talk about today, how you'll do that. I'd like to think of an organization very much like you've got 4 posts, and you got rubber bands around those 4 posts. And inside that rubber band is the culture of the organization, how the organization really functions, how they think, what makes it function correctly. And along comes something like Six Sigma, and you see that distortion. It pushes it up, and the culture changes for a while. And then all of a sudden along comes a balanced scorecard, and all of a sudden the focus goes over on the balanced scorecard, and you distort in a different direction. And as soon as the focus goes away from that, it comes back to the original shape. And you're never going to change the culture within your organization unless you move those posts. And that's the key to it. We need to define what those posts are and move those posts forward. Now, confusion is sort of reigned supreme, if you might say, with the executives that we have. Why? Because the gurus, the real originators of the whole quality movement, can't agree on what's the right way to do it. You've got Phil Crosby with his 14 steps. Very, very popular with quality is free. Then we had Robert Deming, and Deming had 14 points, which were very different than Phil's 14 steps. And then he came along later in life and he had 14 points of profound knowledge, which were still different. Then you have Val Feigenbaum, the originator of quality control. And Val had his 10 benchmarks, another approach to it. Joe Duran came along. Joe was the real father of continuous improvement, step by step. Save $1 million and you do it 3 or 4 times, and that's a lot of money. And he looked at just small steps forward. And then you have Dr. Ishikawa from Japan, and his whole theme was, working with teams, and he had 6 categories of transformation. Now here is the gurus, the people that really led the quality movement, and they can't agree to it. And when the president sits down in your company and he looks at what is the methodologies that we have available, he's got to be infused. It's got to be very fused. He doesn't know whether he's going to go forward, he should back up, stop, or move sideways. And truly that was a big confusion that we have. Today, lean is a very popular methodology. It focuses on the elimination of all waste. Who can disagree? That eliminating waste is bad. My grandfather used to say, waste not, need not. So truly, you can't argue with it. But then here's a lean car. Now, you can see this car here. What we did is we did away with the windshield. Now, that saves us a lot of money. And it's also good for your customer. It's good for the customer because with the windshield gone, if he drives too fast, he's going to get bugs in his eyes. So he's going to drive slower, so he's going to be safer. So it's good for the customer. You save money. It's also good because it eliminated the starter. And this is good for the customer because the customer gets out and he cranks the car and he gets a little exercise, and everybody should get some exercise. So you're thinking about your customer, and you've also reduced costs. So this is a good lean car. Now the problem is, this is the type of car we want. That streamlined car, and that's what we need. And what you've got to do is balance this, not looking just at eliminating waste or focus on productivity or quality. You need to focus on how you can give maximum value to everyone, not just the customer, but to all of your stakeholders. Here's a lean woman. She's very lean. All the waste has been removed, but here's a streamlined woman, and that's the one you'll probably want to go with. So truly, if you're going to change the way you're viewed from the outside, it really is temporary. It's when you change the way the organization functions inside, when you start changing your behavioral patterns, your habits, the way things get done. This is where change really occurs and lasts. And that's what we're talking about. Now, typical questions that I get is, why should I have a strategic plan to bring about improvement in my organization? I got lots of problems. I know the problems. I can go work on them. Well, the answer to that is, in my book on improvement, I've listed over 1,300 different tools. And all of them will work. They're all good tools. Some of them are just changes the name. But you've got to find the right combination for your organization that's going to move those posts in your organization that changes the culture of that organization. And that's what we're really going to talk about today. And what I think we have today is death by a million tools. We have trees, we have QFD, we have Six Sigma, we have theory of constraints. We have all of these different tools that's available, and people are grabbing the tools, but they don't know if they're the right tools for them, or are they the very best tools, even if they are. Process improvement is focused on what I'll call 8 8s. There's eliminate 8, there's information 8, there's automate, there's coordinate, there's innovate, there's replicate, there's cultivate, And there's regulate, those 8 A's, and you've got to focus on all of the 8 A's if you're going to actually be successful. And you got to look at them and put them together in a good view. Now, think about it for a minute. Let's all of us pretend that we're the CEO of a big company. I'm sitting there, and I've got to make some decisions. Now, the CEO of a company has someplace between 80 and 90% of all his resources spent. He has no discretion with them. He's got to pay rent. He's got to pay the employees. He's got to buy materials. All of these things, about 90% of all of his resources are already spent. He only has about 10% that he can talk about investing, that he can choose how he wants to invest it. And these are where we're talking about when we're talking about improvement. He's got to make the best decision. He's got this limited amount of resources. And how is he going to get the maximum result from all of these resources? Well, first of all, he sits there and he has the CEO, Chief Financial Officer. The Chief Financial Officer knocks on his door and says, "Boss, I've got the greatest idea for you. With Mike, we have a thing called total cost management. And if you invest all your money and dedicate your time, well, I'll give you 35% reduction in cost." Well, that sounds pretty good, right? Sure it does. Now comes a fellow from industrial engineering, and he comes along and he says, "We have a thing called total productivity management." We have productivity organizations all over the world. We have them in Japan. We have one in Dallas. Productivity is a key thing. He says, you really got to focus on automating your line, getting up productivity. If you get up productivity, what you'll do is you'll get an increase of 35% reduction in costs. Now, if I just invest in these two, I'm going to save 70% of my money. Now, that's pretty good, right? That sounds pretty good to the CEO. But then along comes personnel. And personnel says, hey, we've got a thing called total resource management. You've got to invest in your people. The thing that separates you apart from all other organizations is your people. So you've got to invest in your people, training them, helping them improve, bringing them along. And if you invest in total resource management, going to cut your costs by 30%. Now, all of a sudden, he's eliminated all his costs. You don't have to fool around with those nasty customers, and you're going to start making a profit without even producing any products. So that sounds awfully good, right? Right. But then what knocks on his door comes along thing, our IT shop. And the IT shop says, hey, we have a thing called total technology management. You cannot manage the company running with tubes. You've got to have the latest software, the latest equipment. You've got to have a CRM package. You've got to have these things that's going to drive so you can react on the internet and actually move forward really fast. And oh, by the way, if you invest in me, I'll cut your cost by 35%. Now I'm making 35% profit, and this all sounds pretty good. And then what comes along? Here comes the quality group knocking on the door and says, we have a thing called total cost management. Total cost management. And we come in pretty soft. We don't really, we talk about customer satisfaction and reducing waste, but we don't come in strong. And there's maybe some questions there. Now, what does the chief executive officer do? He's got to choose about how he's going to spend that 10%. And he's going to look at who has the best story, who's giving the best story to him, and that's where he's going to invest his time. And all of them want them to invest all of his time in their technology, just like we're asking him in quality. They spend all of his focus on quality. But he can't do that. And maybe if he doesn't invest it in one, he spreads it around so nobody has enough to really be successful. And that's the problem that they're faced with. Now, I went through that when I left the quality organization and took over as CEO of System Corp, a small consulting firm, small software developing firm, about 125 employees. And I was faced with that, and that dilemma. And I said, I know I can't do this whole thing. So what I did is I studied each one of the technologies, and I looked at what is total cost management in detail, and what is total productivity management in detail. And I found out that there was an awful lot of overlap. They all were talking about saving in the same way. They all talked about having teams. They all talked about project management. So they all talked about the same thing and was claiming savings in the same way. And so, as you see here, there's an awful overlap between what they want, what each of them is trying to do. And so in the methodology we selected, we said where all 5 things overlap, there's where the best performance will occur. And when you get 4 that overlaps, that's the second best. And so we developed an approach around that idea of where those overlaps occur, that's the best thing to do. And this pyramid here represents that. You know, at the very base of the pyramid we have is value to all stakeholders. Now, from a quality standpoint, we probably would have said value to the customer. But really in a corporation today, we have a bigger obligation. We have to provide value to our investors. We have to provide value to our employees. We have to provide value to the system that we work in. Truly, we've got to look at that total stockholders. The next level is to set direction. The brown level here is the basic concepts. The next one is we're looking at how you deliver processes to them, then the organizational impact, and at the very top, a reward and recognition system that pulls it all together. And this broke down now into a pyramid that's made up of 15 different blocks. Now, unfortunately, today we don't have time to go through all the blocks, so I'm going to just select one of the blocks that we're going to talk about, and that's the one we're going to need to look at. And here, we're looking at how we're going to move forward very fast. And, you know, information is coming to us faster than ever before. The amount of information doubles. It's available to us every 5 years. The New York Times today contains more information than a person in the 17th century would ever get, just in one issue, more information. So truly, you've got a dynamic world. We've got to look at that total thing. And to change an organization's culture, we need to define what are the key facets, the things that control the way we behave in an organization. I'm going to call those business drivers. These are the things that you can invest in as a business leader that will make the culture change. Move those posts. These are the things that you can invest money or resources in or take them away to bring about changes. And you need to define what are the key business drivers in your organization before you decide what you're going to do, because that's what's going to drive your movement forward. We're going to explain to you about a 3-step approach to doing this. First of all, we're going to define what the organization needs to do to change. Next, we're going to define what the organization needs to change and when it should change. And last, we're going to talk about managing the organization's change process. So we're going to talk about those 3 phases. So in the phase 1, we really got to have a very clear view or a vision of where we want to go in the future, what is the future state within the organization. And to do that, we'll define what we'll need to change in the organization. And this is a different approach than we've used in the past. We've grabbed tools to make change. Now what we're actually doing, we're saying, how do we want to change in the future? And these are what I'm going to call, again, these key business drivers. Some people call them controllable factors. But these are the things, again, that we can control and move forward with. And a typical business driver might be leadership and support, or it could be your customer partnership. Typically in an organization, there's someplace like 8 to 12 key business drivers. And you need to define what those are. And once you've defined where they are, then what we really need to do is to first do an assessment to determine what the as-is state is. So we'll do an assessment to define the as-is state of each of the business drivers, and then we'll develop vision statements of how these drivers should change over the next 5 years. Now, a typical assessment would start with something like an as-is should be assessment. An as-is should be assessment has about 40 questions in it, but each question is answered in 3 ways. It's answered, how is it today? How would you like to see it change, and what is the priority to make the change? And so we can look at a numerical evaluation for each question, because you take the difference between where you are today and where you want to be and the priority, and that gives it a weighting factor. So you can actually calculate the weighting factor for each of these questions. Now, different than what we've normally done, we've normally went to the executive team and asked them what they want to do. Now what we're going to do is we'll do this assessment at the executive level, middle managers level, at the line manager level, and at the employee level. And so what we'll do is we'll look at what are the top 5 priorities that they want to change, and what are the lowest 5. It doesn't mean because it's the lowest 5 that they don't need to change, or that the group does not think they should change. What it means is it has less priority than others. And I'm always amazed at the difference in priorities that you see. And the big problem we've had in the past is we focused on what the priorities were for the executive team. We haven't really looked at the people that's going to make it happen, and that's the workers themselves. So this is a major breakthrough. There are also the technique called, for each of the normal business drivers, there's maturity grids, levels of 12 that we use in the assessment. Historical change analysis, you got to talk about what's happened in the past, because that's going to impact your future. If you've been successful in making change, it's a lot easier than as though you've had problems in making change in the past. So truly that is it. And eventually you'll probably build a cultural model for the whole organization. So that's the first part of it. The next activity is we'll establish a vision statement for each and every one of the business drivers, these 8 business drivers. We talked about one that's common to everybody, leadership and support. And we know where it is because that's the first part. We did an assessment where we are. How do we want this to be different in the future? How do we want to change it? And so we'll sit down with the executive team and we'll get a vision statement of how they would like to change the way they're going to interface with their employees and how they're going to lead their employees. Then what we do is for each of those 8, then we go out and we have focus group. We'll have sales meet with customers and say, here's the interface that we're going to have for you in the future, and get their input. Is that something you want? Is this something that you feel comfortable with? And then we'll bring them back. And now the executives come back, and they don't represent just themselves, they represent their team, their whole interface. And the amazing part about this is I've did it many, many times, and I've never came back for what there's a major change from what the executives originally had in the preliminary and the final vision statements that come out. And this is an exciting period because, you don't have to talk to everybody in the company. You talk to a few of them, the word gets around and said, do you know, my manager asked me how I'd like to be managed. Nobody's ever asked me that. I'll bet you the average one out there, but you've never been asked that by your manager. In the expectation and the ready to accept change, the willingness to move forward throughout the organization just swells at this point in time. Very important facet because they see the difference between what they thought was important as an executive team and how they modified that as a result of what was going on when they talked to their employees. Truly, you've got to have a very clear vision of where you want to go. And that's the problem. We haven't had a clear vision of where we want to go. We're driving down the road with mud all over our windshield and we're traveling 100 miles an hour and we don't know whether to stop, turn left, turn right, or speed up. And that's the problem that we had. So you've got to say, how do I want to change and what do I want to look like in the future before you can select any tools? And that's the problem. We just select tools without understanding how it's going to impact us, nor do we really care. Let me give you an example. Certainly processes are a very important one. And here's a one that came out from one of the companies I worked with. Major processes are documented, understood, followed, easy to use, prevent errors, and are designed to be adaptable to our stakeholders' changing needs. Staff uses them because they believe they are more efficient and effective than any other option they have. Technology is effectively used to handle routine, repetitive, time-consuming activities and to remove bureaucracy from our processes. Isn't that a nice environment? Isn't that one that you would like to work in? And truly, that sets some real goals and how we're going to how we're going to move forward. Truly, once we have that vision of where we want to go, then we can really start saying, what is the right thing to do? How are we going to do it? And what is the right timing? So the next thing what we'll do is define what the organization needs to do and when to do it to change. And this is a part 2. And here, this is a 5-step activity. First of all, we're going to set some performance goals. We'll define some behaviors that we want to. We'll develop some individual plans and we'll combine them. And we'll design a cultural change management strategy. Now, when we start, the first thing we'll do is set some performance goals, and we'll look at where we're going to change these business drivers, and we say, how are we going to measure to see that that's going to happen, and what is that going to do to affect our organization? And it might be something like this, where we're focused on customer satisfaction. For year 1, it's at 60. Year 2, it goes up to 65. Year 3, up to 75, and moves up. So you just select some goals, and you want to select goals so it's going to be profitable during the first year. With this long idea that quality takes time, it's going to take years to do it. If it takes years, you're not going to last. The program will be dropped. You need to be profitable and select things that's going to give you profit, or at least break even during the first year. And I like to do it during the first 6 months. Now, the next thing we'll do is talk about behavioral patterns, and you'll look at how you want to change the behavioral patterns within the organization. For example, a typical thing you may want to make your employees more empowered. Well, what does an empowered employee look like? Well, certainly wild ideas are encouraged. They're not discouraged. Unsolicited recommendations and suggestions are often turned in. So you say, for each of these visions of where you want to go, how is behaviors going to change? And define what those are. Why? Because behaviors change before you get results. And so we want a quick early indication that we're going in the right direction. Truly, that's an important part. The next thing what we'll do is we'll prepare an individual plan for each of the key business drivers. So we'll have a plan for management, leadership, and support. We'll have another plan for customer partnerships. And what we'll do is we'll look at what are the problems we have today, because we got to solve those problems. And what are the roadblocks we have to move to the future? And once we did that, then we have to go in and we'll select from that 1,300 tools the best single tools to attack them. And probably you will end up with maybe 3 to 5 tools for each of the key business drivers, because there's so much overlap. And when we start looking at it, there's the best combination. In every organization, there's a little different combination that's the best one for them. And when we're doing this, we're not going to plan on it from the standpoint of when is it going to be implemented right now. We're going to talk about how long it takes. There's a big difference between planning and problem solving. And as soon as we define a problem, we want to solve it. And I continuously am fighting with the executive team when we're doing this, because they want to solve the problem. But here, what we want to do is just say, if we want to do something, how long is it going to take, and what's the sequence that we'll use in taking that? So you end up with something like this. You notice across the top, it just months. It doesn't say what month it is, but it talks about how many months it takes to implement each of these tools that we've selected in this case, and this one happens to be management, leadership, and support. Once we did that, then we're going to combine those together. And we're going to combine all these 8 different plans together, considering things like what are the availability of resources, what other activities are going on, what holidays are happening. Sometimes around Christmas, maybe you got a heavy workload and you've got to shift things around. And so now we'll take and we'll merge these together so that, number 1, we're going to meet our measurement objectives that we started off with. And number 2, we got to not overstress the organization. The biggest single problem I'm facing with my executive team, they want to do it all the first year. And when I tell them, no, we can't do that, we need to move that over to the 2nd or 3rd year, they're upset. But they always want to overcommit, and they want to, And as soon as they overcommit, they're dooming themselves to failure because they're going to put too much strain on the organization. So truly you have to spread this across, although there's so many great opportunities for us to do right away, but you need to move it out because you got to be thoughtful about what's going to happen. You've got to still continue to make your products. You can't just devote everything to the improvement effort. And so you end up with something like this, where you've got a 3-year plan where you selected what's going to roll out and you selected your priorities between the individual business drivers so that you're accomplishing what you want to do and you're accomplishing it in the correct order. Then what you'll do is design a change management plan. And this is very important because what we're thinking about is major changes. In the book, Re-Engineering the Corporation, Hammer and Champy point out that some 50 to 70% of the reorganization attempt failed to deliver the intended drastic results. And why? Primarily because they overstressed the organization. They didn't take into consideration the emotional impact that these major changes have on their people. Research confirms that as much as 60% of the change initiatives and other projects will fail as a direct, fundamental inability to manage the social implications. And that's the Gardner's Group's analysis. Gardner went on and said that the lack of understanding of a typical manufacturer dysfunctional behavior, which going to extreme causes a downward spiral within the organization, causing it to go into a deep recession, which they can't pull out because they really don't understand the cause of it. Enterprises that are facing a transformation like we're talking about when we're talking about redesigning or major improvements in quality must first develop a change management competency before they go in and start to apply. And they need to be able to apply an organizational discipline for cultural analysis very early. If you look at it, what we have is 3 levels. I'm going to look at it from the standpoint here. We have a culture and technology, and under technology we have technology and task, and under culture we have structure and people. First order, you have a task and technology, and those are the only things that are affected. Very low-level magnitude stress on the organization. Move over to the second level and we add people to it, and you can see here that we've increased the stress on the organization by a factor of 200%. And that's getting to the point that you really got to think about putting in some organizational change management activities. Third order, now we've added the structure in it, and look at the complexity. We're up by 600% over the original one. And that's where we're really talking about. When we talk about cultural change, when we talk about implementing Six Sigma, when we talk about lean, any of these things that we're talking about to move forward in improving performance is really a third order of magnitude. Very complex, and we really got to be able to consider change. And you look at the dynamics of the culture. It's a very dynamic thing. We're talking about behaviors, competencies, knowledge, structure, technology, systems. You can see in this spiral that I've got here how complex the dynamics of your culture is, and we have to consider all of those when we're talking about developing a change management process to move forward. What's happened, we as quality professionals have been very good at focusing on processes. We understand the process. We do a good job. We've also got pretty good at technology. We've got to the point that we have our technology down. What we've missed is the people side of it. The organizational change management, the organizational alignment has been the weakness, and that's what's caused the failures so often in our attempts to bring about major change within the organization. And you can consider one of the simple things in the organizational change management theory is pain management. You would think that the people out there working today who really understands the job, they understand how much pain there is related to their job. And what we're going to do is we're going to take them through out of this place where they're comfortable, they know the pain, but they've been able to adjust to it, and they feel that they can accomplish their job. We're going to take them through a transitional period where they've lost control, and we're going to move them into a future state system that somebody else is saying is going to be better for them. And if there is more pain related to where they are today than the pain that they feel that they're going to go through during transition, and the pain that they see in the future, because nothing is always perfect, that they will never change. They will stay where they are. They'll do everything possible. And that's true. But there's another factor in it. There's the as-is pain, what they have today. But the bigger pain, what if they don't change? And so management has to highlight to them the impact of what happens if we don't change, so that they can make a legitimate decision. There's over 50 different change management tools that we all have to become very familiar with, and we have to be able to move very quickly from a change agent's hat to a technology hat and back and forth. So we're really looking at developing a whole new structure in our way of thinking, where we can do things like cultural assessment, landscape surveys, where we change agents evaluation. These whole tools we have to become more competent in than we ever have in the past to move forward in this fast-changing environment that we're in today. If you look at this diagram, I call it my P diagram. We have P1. P1 is the present state, and you see it's a lot of variation up and down at a low level. P2 is the preferred state, where we want to get to. Smaller variation at a higher performance level. And then we have P3, which is pain. Here's where we get punished if we drop down below that performance level. And P4 is pleasure. Here's where we get rewarded if we go above it. And now what happens with activity 1 is where we don't change the pain or the pleasure level at all. We leave it constant, and you can see we surge up, we improve, but then we settle down, and we end up right back where we were. But when you start changing the pleasure and pain levels, then you start to move forward to where you want to be, and that's what we really need to do. We really need to have a recognition system that changes how we reward people, that we reward them for the behavioral patterns that we want to bring out. And then the last part of it here is, once we did that, then we'll roll out the project into a continuous mode. So here we'll break it down into, I like to go with a 3-month, where every month we'll roll off 30 days and add 30 days to it, so we can track very accurately who's going to do what down to the actual week and move forward. Now, if you look at this, what we actually did is, if you look at an organizational master plan, we have the business plan, and the business plan is something you do very early in an organization. When you first start your organization, you do that primarily to get money, resources. And then we have a strategic business plan, and this is how the outside world looks at us. This is the market we're going to go into. And we've just developed a strategic improvement plan. Now, you have to put together the business plan and the improvement plan together into the total strategic plan, and that has to feed into the annual budget, the annual operating plan. And truly, one of the problems that we continuously have, we try to move the improvement plan into the activities that are going on without a budget. You would never install a big major CRM system without having a separate budget. But continuously, we don't budget for the improvement initiatives. And today we need to do that, because now we've got a plan that will allow us to do it, and it makes a huge difference if you've got budget and plan and resources to move forward. Typically what you'll see is an organizational alignment that you're looking at here, where you've got a strategic plan, you've got that put together, and it brings about some drastic change in the organization. From there, you look at what are the processes and networks that's going to drive that plan, and define the ones that are crucial to that. Then the next thing you need to do is to organize around those processes. So we're talking about structural change to the organization itself. You look at what are the capacities of the people, will the people be able to implement and be able to operate in that new environment that we're going to set for them. And then we change the reward and recognition system to reinforce it. And this is the strategy that we talk about when we talk about organizational alignment. Very important part that we actually drive the organization based upon the strategies that we've developed. Here's some typical companies that we've applied this to: Lambda, Martin Marietta Manned Space, U.S. Air Force Systems Division, State of Arizona Department of Transportation, Eastern Space and Missile Center. And way down here at the low end here, at the last one is Accurate. Big organization above it. Accurate was 75 people, and they've implemented the same approach. So truly, it works for big or small companies. Every day in Africa, a gazelle wakes up knowing that he must be the fastest gazelle if he's going to survive, or the lion will eat him. Every day in Africa, a lion wakes up knowing that he must be the fastest lion in the pride, or he won't survive. It doesn't make any difference whether you're a lion or a gazelle. When you wake up in the morning, you better be running. Well, I hope you enjoyed the talk. And I hope that you will benefit from this. I invite you to contact us and talk with us a little bit more about this in detail. I know we presented it very fast. I'd like to close by saying I wish you a quality day with a high degree of reliability. Thank you very much.
Incredible, Dr. Harrington. Thank you for such a great presentation. It's always inspiring to hear you and listen to the great wealth of knowledge that comes from all your presentations. It's also an honor to have you as my mentor for the last many years. And now, please stand by for our next presenter.